No?
No, like she just stays on this nice little calendar for me. And when we get closer to the events, I look and say, yeah. So I could give you
So I'm guessing one of these
the
ladies
teacher
out
right
here
now
is
is
the
one
youngest
of
person.
first day is
17.
22nd.
I don't have anything she's gonna have a volunteer in that meeting.
I'd like to call the Monday, August 12th board meeting to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Nazario.
Here.
Mr. Ferguson.
Here.
Dr. Ballard.
Here.
Mrs. Washington. Here. Mr. Sturgill.
Here.
Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recognition of visitors.
Recognition of visitors, we've got a few here. Kiara Williams. We have Veronica Newsom, right there for questions. And Christina Wasco, who is not a guest or a visitor. She is a part of the family, but leading the charge at Palm Elementary School.
Good to have you.
Would you like for them to speak? Yep.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Alarcon-Wiskovinik. I'm the assistant principal at Palm Elementary. I'm joined today by Kiera Williams. She's our Safe Route to Schools coordinator from Lorain County Public Health. And we are also joined by Veronica Newsom, who is a staff engineer for the city of Lorain. Today, we're seeking your approval for our 2024 Lorain Active Transportation Plan, and we're going to work together collectively to move this plan forward. All right, we're going to hop right in. We're going to start off by defining active transportation. So active transportation is human-powered transportation. It's about getting people to major and everyday destinations like school by walking, biking, or rolling. So this work began in 2017, and it was time to update the plan, which happens every 5 years. As you can see on this timeline here, the revision started in winter of 2023, and now we're at the end where the box is highlighting, and the plan is complete, and we're seeking your approval by signing the resolution today. It is in July, Lorain City Council and Lorain County Public Health approved the plan and signed the resolution.
Now I want to talk a little bit about engagement. So I think it is important to note that this plan was vetted by your community and for your community using data-driven decisions. We hosted 3 steering committee meetings that made up of many partners from the city of Lorain, such as Dr. Sturgill from Lorain City Schools, Lorain County Public Health, the libraries, Parks and Rec, El Centro, and the list does go on. I attended one school event on behalf of Lorain County Public Health. It was the Candyland event, and we received feedback from the families you all serve. We also had 2 library events for public input, and we also administered a few surveys for those we could not reach in person. We also used existing conditions to support the plan. Through this process, we found that many bike and ped crashes are happening around the schools. On this map, the schools are highlighted in black. You can't really see them, it's kind of tiny. And then there's stars surrounding the schools that either highlight it was a pedestrian crash or a bicycle crash. Another important finding was from the census. The biggest population currently in Lorain are young people, 19 and younger. Those 2 data points that we just shared with you played a part in some of the future recommendations, along with many other analyses that were conducted. Based on the data, what has been recommended? On the next few slides, you will see what has been recommended on the infrastructure, which is known as like the built environment side, the roads, streets, and sidewalks. And you will also see different programs and policies that have been suggested, which we call the non-infrastructure plan. For infrastructure, you can see on this map, there are school improvements that were identified, like sidewalks and bike ped crossings. The City of Lorain will now pick projects from here to apply for future funding. You can view past projects from the City of Lorain's website by scanning that QR code at your convenience, and will highlight some of the other projects that have already been completed at some of your school buildings previously.
Right. So this is going to go over some of the non-infrastructure things in the plan. We have a Safe Route to Schools committee that will move forward the recommended programs and policies that you will see on the next few slides. So we're going to first talk about some connectivity programs that we're currently working on or plan to begin. I'm just going to highlight the ones where Lorain City Schools is a part of. So first we have trainings in curricula through Safe Route to Schools, walking routes including winter maintenance priority routes and Safe Route to Schools. These are some safety programs and policies we're currently working on or plan to begin. So we have the Pledge for Safe Driving, Arrival and Dismissal Operations, and Eyes on the Street program. And finally, there's some health programs and policies that are currently being working on or we are planning to begin. Indoor walking clubs, walking, biking, or rolling to school days, an update to student wellness policy, and walking school buses.
Okay, so for next steps, we're here today at Lorain City Schools for your approval, as we shared in the beginning, of the adoption of this plan. We shared already that the City Council of Lorain and Lorain County Public Health approved the resolution in July. By your approval, this will open up doors for future funding opportunities. As you can see listed on the slide, there's some there. We get Safe Routes to School dollars from ODOT directly, pedestrian safety dollars. We also get money from NOACA, which is our MPO, and other opportunities as well. So we want to open the floor if there's any questions for us at this time.
Any questions?
Yeah, why would we not want to do this?
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
It-
And that's all we have.
I would just like to say thank you, and I apologize for the brief introduction, but I was told it's a very short presentation,
Yep.
and I've been known to spoil the entire presentation in my introduction. So I just want to say thanks, the health department, the city, schools, El Centro, libraries, and all the other partners took part in this. And the whole idea is to make sure kids have a safe path from point A to point B when they don't have a car. So there's so many impediments that we don't consider when you're trying to walk, and I appreciate, especially in the wintertime, when our sidewalks aren't plowed, how do we get kids to school, and that is a major issue for us. So I want to thank you for the work, the effort, and I agree that, Kara, that this is something that does open, not only is this great, but it opens up the door for so many things coming forward. So just thank you for how you conducted the gathering of all the information and putting everything together. I just very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank
The
you.
words incubate and replicate come to mind.
And we do have another presentation. I'd like to invite Krista Lokich up to the stand, again, another part of the family. And Mick Becerra was not able to be here today. He was supposed to have surgery and didn't because he has COVID. So he's nothing major with the surgery, but so Krista's going to represent herself as well as Mick Becerra.
Thank you. I'm Krista Lockage. I'm the Communications Director here at Lorain City Schools, and I am speaking on behalf of Mick Becerra, Executive Director of Secondary Initiatives here at Lorain City Schools. I am here without a presentation, but just to tell you about driver's education here at Lorain High School becoming a during the day elective course. It's part of our curriculum. This is something that Mr. Becerra has worked on and been passionate about for many years, as long as I've known him. And it was challenging, to say the least, to get this to come to fruition, but with a lot of hard work and making a lot of great connections statewide, it was able to happen. As we know, transportation equity is an issue in Ohio and across the country. We are able, through this program, to give our students free access to driver's education. The only thing that they'll be paying for is their driver's exam fee and their driver's license fee. Everything else will be covered under a grant that we received called the Code Grant through the Department of Public Safety. We partner with a ESC. It's not our Lorain County ESC, but we found them through our Lorain County ESC. East Central Ohio ESC has been handling like driver's education programs through public schools, being sort of the parent organization that handles a lot of the stuff that we couldn't have afforded to handle on our own. We applied for the grant in tandem with them and received it. It's a 2-year grant, and it will allow us to get the ball rolling. Does anyone have any questions?
Is it a full year class or a half a year?
No, it's not even a semester. So
Oh, okay.
I think what's going to happen is, and forgive me because as we're piloting this,
Of course, yeah.
we're going to have to learn and pivot. But what I think is going to happen is we will have 4 students go through the program. We have 2 teachers, so maybe 4 students per teacher are going to be able to go through the program in 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
You used the word course. Course to me implies credit, but this is not.
A half a credit. It's an elective. Yeah, it's been 3 decades, and that was one of the hard parts, Mr. Ferguson, is trying to find out, to get the driver's license training program through the Department of Public Safety, and to find out how to award the credit through the Department of Education and Workforce Development,
Wow, okay.
How do parents sign up their students?
through their counselor.
Krista, I have a question.
Yeah,
More
sure.
comment, and it kind of goes maybe to what you're asking, Mr. Ferguson, that it's for credit. I know that Anna Grant teaches a reading class, and she's one of our intervention specialists who does that. And one of the things that she does with her reading class is read the manual for driver's ed to try to help prepare kids. And it is very reading intensive and comprehension intensive, and I think that aligns very nicely with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, instructional text, that's awesome. I will make sure to let the people who need to know that. That's good to know. Anybody else?
Any other questions, comments?
Again, on behalf of Mr. Becerra, we're really proud of this initiative and we're excited.
Yeah, Mick Becerra has been focused in driving this bus for years now, 3 or 4 years anyway, and Chris was the part to get it across the finish line. I just want to thank them both for all their efforts, because otherwise, many of our children just don't have the opportunity to experience this until well beyond high school years. But I would like to take the next step here and apologize. My computer was scrolled up, and I apologize for any disrespect to the friends or families of people that we lost recently. But I wanted to start the board meeting with a moment of silence. So I apologize for any disrespect. I promise was not intended. But we started our last board meeting with a moment of silence because we lost 3 very influential and people who took care of our children and a child himself. This board meeting is unfortunately starting out the same way. I'd like to start out with a moment of silence for Gary Huff. Coach Huff was a standout football player and wrestler. He was inducted to the Sports Hall of Fame in 2016. He coached throughout Lorain County with many stops in the Lorain City schools. And most recently, he was coaching middle school in our district last year and was going to be our football coach this year. He was adored by his players, current and former, and he'll be dearly missed. The other member that we lost, a long-standing community leader, Mike Conover. Many of us know him from his service and as the executive director of Boys and Girls Club, but he also served children everywhere and always. And to qualify him, I'm just going to read 3 quotes that I remembered from his service. So if I'm misquoting, it's because it's going from memory, but I'm really close. And I think that anybody knows Mike, these are pretty spot on. He was always there whenever you needed him. Another person said, he was the first man I ever trusted. And another said, he never met a person that he didn't love. Just please a moment of silence. Our children and our adults and our families will miss them all dearly. Thank you. And I apologize again for going out of order there.
First hearing of the public.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl DeFranco, and I'm a longtime educator in this school district. My colleagues and I are here this evening to get some clarification on what the district is planning for the cell phone policy once school begins in 2 weeks. We have seen email blasts and Facebook posts this summer from district officials talking about a Way for the Day program, and also about furthering conversations with the community and parents, and also about waiting until second semester before any decision is made about using locked cell phone pouches or other methods of cell phone policy institutions. What my colleagues and I would like to know includes the following items. What are the district's plans for the cell phone policy for the first 18 weeks of school, in particular for our high school? You have mentioned further discussions about pouches, and you pushed back this and some other ideas for the second semester, but what about the first semester? How will we proceed as we begin this new school year? Also, my colleagues and I would like to know if you, the Lorain Board of Education and the district administration, are you going to support our policy for the first semester, and in what ways will we see your support? We would like to know when parents and students will be sent a communication about our first semester phone policy and the consequences students will face for not adhering to this phone policy. And we'd also like to know when our staff will be made aware of our first semester cell phone policy and consequences for students not adhering to this policy. In our very first education classes in college, we were taught that the first days of school are vital in setting up classroom, hallway, and school-wide procedures with students. We were taught that the way in which you begin school should be the way in which you would want to continue throughout the school year. You begin how you want to proceed. Please tell my colleagues and I how you, the leaders of our school district, plan to proceed in instituting a first semester cell phone policy. Do you want me to repeat the questions, like one by one, or would that be helpful?
No.
Would you like me to respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Typically, it's not a dialogue at a board meeting, it's a board meeting for them to conduct business.
Okay.
Typically, in this situation, what we would do is gather the information and get it all to you in a way, it won't be anybody anytime, but don't want to be disrespectful to the board process. But coincidentally, actually, Michael Scott's doing a presentation on exactly where we are, and I think we'll address most of those questions. Is that right or wrong? He knows it. He actually was on the news at 3 o'clock, so he understands he's doing this. Yeah. Well, he's going to share, he's going to give an update on exactly where we are. And I got your question, Cheryl, accurately. I think he's going to address most, if not, I think all of those.
Sure.
But we'll wait to that portion of
I'll
the
wait
part,
for
is that all right?
the order of-
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I want to be respectful to you, but also to what
Gotcha.
they've,
Thank
the
you.
parameters they've set. Thank you. Well, wait till our part, is that, I just want to be respectful of the process. Yeah.
Tell me go time.
Well, typically it's my area, my
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
So we'll do that shortly.
I think there's more.
Any more? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Draga, and I'm also a teacher here at Lorain High. And I came in with my thoughts gathered, and since then, you know me, I'm already full of notes and things that are running through my head. But I guess to start with, when I think about Mike Conabear, I didn't have the privilege of knowing him personally, but I worked very closely with Diane when she was in the district as a teacher. She was also my administrator, and I'm very proud to say that when she chose to bring her son and daughter from Firelands to Lorain schools, she wanted Gretchen to have me as her math teacher for 10th grade. And then at the end of that year, Gretchen said that she wanted to be a math teacher. And that was really meaningful to me. And I just think, given the, I don't know what the right word is, respect that those two adults have from our community and how they chose to spend their life here in Lorain, to bring their children here to Lorain, and then eventually to return here to Lorain, even when she wasn't part of our district with the Academic Distress Commission. Just how meaningful it would be for Diane and maybe even Mike to have had the privilege to give their diploma to their son and daughter. There was a Newsnet 5 story shortly after our graduation where Allison Loera, Shane Ramey Rowland, and Emerson Nazario all had glowing things to say about how Lorain is emerging. And I want to get their quote right. I don't have that in my memory yet. Excuse me. She said we're a community that, Allison said, we're a community that comes together and we have a lot of passion for our community. Her peers agreed they'd be proud to be from Lorain and represent the city's future. We have a lot of students working diligently to create this culture in this community. Emerson added, Lorain is community, Lorain is determination, and Lorain is proud to be Lorain. And I think about how many of my teacher friends and my administrator friends and people sitting here have chosen to not just reside here, but send your kids here. And I think that the Chronicle Telegram article that said that when Matt Killian wanted to give his diploma to his son, that his brush or bump and hurriedly, but the article says, such conduct, if found to be true and accurate, is deemed unprofessional, insubordinate, and displays use of one's position for personal advantage. And I think that's what we're here for, is to gain position of personal advantage where we have those opportunities to make meaningful moments. And when we have these students who say they want to be part of this community, we had Sly Worthy come back, you know, and I think how much would it mean to our community to see that the teachers and the administration and the board are all really part of that community, not insubordinate and unprofessional. And so I was thinking about all of that when I went to my own son's graduation just a few days later. He's a graduate of Firelands High School, and he'll be attending Bowling Green to become a teacher himself. So watch out in 3 years if we need a gym teacher. At my own son's school, they had a healthy showing of staff who sat on the field wearing school colors, not graduation gowns and caps, but they were there as community members. They sat on the field, and many of them had nieces, nephews, children who were graduating, and when their graduate row was called, the adult stood up, walked to the front, got the diploma, walked across the stage, handed it to them, and it was really, really a special moment. Out of all the graduations that I've attended, I could say I don't remember who handed me anything, but I darn well would remember it and think very fondly of it if it had been my father or my aunt or my uncle. And so I asked a Firelands staff member who actually gave her niece and nephew this summer their diplomas, how do they go about this? And she said in April, the administration sends a letter to all staff asking if they have any family members who they would like to present the diploma to. When the staff member indicates who they'd like to give the diploma to, then the second step is to get permission from the parent to do so. So in the event that it is the parent, that second step is obviously taken care of. And I think back just a few minutes ago, Mr. Ferguson, you said, why would we not want to do this? And then you used the words, let's incubate and replicate. And I hope that you'll discuss changing our board policy so that the staff can be seen as part of the community and less of the us versus them, and more that we are a team, and maybe even use the word family in a genuine way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Can we approve the minutes from the July 29th special meeting? Can I have a motion to approve? I'm sorry.
Support.
And the board waives the right to read the minutes from that meeting. Roll call?
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Can I have a motion to suspend the order?
So moved.
Roll call?
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Do you want to speak before the executive session?
You want to?
Is that all right?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that the
fine.
way-
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. let's
And
do
we're going to be in executive session for a little while, but I think I told you that we've got most of your questions answered, and Michael's got the, I think, the most current update, but much more current than I am.
Good evening, everyone. Just so that we're on the same page, the policy as written has talked extensively on students may use PCDs before or after school, during their lunch break, in between classes, as long as they don't create a distraction, disruption, or otherwise interfere with the educational environment. And I think that's been the polarizing conversation, is determining what is, in fact, a distraction. And I want to, just come forth and say, obviously, those classroom spaces need to be sacred and should be sacred. And that's the first line of defense in this policy for that. So we've been working with the school leaders, specifically the high school and the middle school, on creating administrative guidelines to help enforce that piece. So what that entails, and there will be a range. So I don't want people to think, well, first this one, then that one. Progressive discipline has been something that historically school districts have done. We are more of a logical consequence. So I want to make sure that that's understood. Logical consequence meaning there is a range. So the first could be, hey, put that away. Here's the policy and what it says. Then, in talking with school leaders, confiscation is a part of that. The role of who's responsible for that and when, that will be discussed as a staff when staff returns. But the one thing that we do not want to create is a confrontational moment in the classroom setting where it becomes argumentative and then it takes way more time than need be. So school leaders will be talking with staff on how to do so, how to let administration know when cell phone violations have occurred. Then the range of confiscation, parent pickup, and other consequences to be determined by administration, no different than any other violation of the code of conduct. So that's where we are. That is day one. There will be conversations that are needed with our students. I'll say specifically at the high school where they've navigated in different classrooms differently. We are on one accord. The policy is the policy, and we will enforce that. The point is, we want connectivity and engagement, right? I don't want to lose that piece. I know that wasn't a direct question, but I think our community needs to understand that this isn't just about compliance. It is for engagement purposes. There is a ton of research that is on our Department of Education and Workforce website that speaks to the harms that increased screen time does for students. We also have to recognize that an overwhelming proportion of our students have access to cell phones, right? And we're not just talking at the high school. We'll talk middle school, and we'll talk late elementary. I've said this in previous board meetings, and I'll reiterate, as a parent, monitoring screen time and putting those habits in place has been maybe some of the most challenging work that I've had as a parent, but it is the right work. And I believe we have to help our families understand that that work that is done on the home front impacts what happens at school. We also have to be conscious that there are some real concerns from the community in regards to how do I access my child in the case of, right, the worst case scenario situations. Some not worst case scenarios, but my child is involved in an extracurricular and the weather has changed and the games have changed and we're trying to coordinate communication. And it's hard to get through to the front office because guess what? A lot of people are calling the front office and it is hard at times. So when we said we wanted to learn more as an organization, some of that is to work through those pieces as well. The commitment to learning the challenges is one that we have to embrace, meaning being on one accord in regards to the enforcement of the cell phone policy has not been a standardized practice. We as adults controlling what's within our boat are taking those stances. We're asking families to have that ongoing communication with the students that are coming in about the importance of being cell phone free in key instructional places. Then I do believe we have additional work in regards to the impact of social media on our children, the safety of internet, and so we'll protect our students a lot from day to day, face-to-face pieces, but some of the most dangerous times now are online. The sheer accessibility to mature content and the impact that has on how our students then engage in school, the research is there for all that and then some. That's the ongoing conversation. So when we talk about having conversation with the community, we have a back-to-school bash this Sunday. We will be prepared to engage in a conversation with people so we can learn exactly what those concerns are. Yes, we did a survey. It was out. We had an overwhelming amount of student response in there. I would love to hear more from more families about what their concerns are. I believe our staff represented the thoughts well and continue to do so. Now we have to find what's the just best approach for us as a district and as a community. And I do believe in connection with our board that we can, and we've proven we can listen, learn, and lead and continue to do so. But we can enforce what is already written, which when we start talking about connections to House Bill 250, and I'll wrap this up shortly. The idea was to establish an official policy governing cell phone and minimize the use of cell phone. We have a policy that affords us. As adults, we are going to put that into action. And what we ask for is support from students and compliance from students and support from families in doing so. When we work together on that, we may be having a different conversation at the end of first quarter, where we're not necessarily talking about the restrictive pieces, or we may not. And I think we have to take the time to, we believe we have to take the time to engage in that. The House Bill 250 also emphasized limiting cell phone use and reducing cell phone related distractions in the classroom. That was a big part of in the classroom. So once again, going back to what our policy states, it is clear that students may use PCDs before or after school, in between classes, but I'm gonna come back to as long as they don't create a distraction. At the middle school level, they've been working on this for a couple years now. There were a lot of different distractions. So administrative guidelines, they've been working with the students and families on a stay away piece. There's been some positive benefits to that. We need to bring that into the conversation on a global scale as well. So update in regards to conversation, that really doesn't cover everything that's been talked about. There's been a lot of conversations. And recognizing that there are emotions that are connected to this. There are fears that are connected to this. But there's a desire by our staff to have the ultimate ability to engage in a way that, as professionals, we desire, because we know the benefit that will have for our students. And a large portion of our students will get this and understand. We want all to get this and understand. We want our families to feel like, hey, when I send my children to school, they are safe, they are loved, they are supported. This is one conversation of a larger ongoing conversation, but it is a critical one. And it's evident by the legislation that exists and other communities that are engaging in this. There are a lot of communities that have gone very restrictive in their approach. There are also that are doing the exact same thing that we are, and there are some that aren't touching this until 2025, in which the legislation speaks to it having to be put in place. So that's also the gamut of this continuum of where we are as a field, because things happen outside of Lorain City Schools too. And I implore us all to pay attention to the state landscape as well, as we continue to have our first semester conversations.
May I?
Of course.
I get these questions quite a bit at home, and my wife was asking me, and about, well, am I supposed to put this in my syllabus? And I said, well, it is, classroom directed, so yes, you better be ready to address that. Is that our first line of defense, is what we're asking?
So, one, I'm not a big fan of sending people a lot of emails on their time off contract. So you may not have, if you are checking, great. Secondly, I think that when we return on the Monday that's coming up, there will be ample opportunity for our staff to engage with leadership and really talk about messaging, because we do have to be on one accord. It does have to be for this. There's a one band, one sound approach that needs to be resonated throughout the building. So in your personal syllabi, great. In the back to school message from the school leader, awesome. In the district-wide approach, we've laid that foundation. And then we have to be flexible enough to be able to articulate to those that may not have gotten all access to all of those means of communication, to have that face-to-face dialogue and explain the why, and then hold true to it. I think that's what I hear our staff asking is, commit to something, hold true to it.
The other question I have is whether we call it personal communication devices or cell phones, earbuds.
Yeah, so
Personal communication.
So our policy speaks to web or internet-based pieces, so their Bluetooth capabilities, but that will be part of, I think the conversation moving forward. But we have the ability to restrict those as well right now. There is obviously, all right, so a little layman's piece here. If I have this in my ear, it's connected to something. It's not a fashion thing. It's not, my ear ring. It's connected to something. We have the authority to say, you need to remove that.
I only bring that up by virtue of the fact that it needs to be spelled out to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great part, and I'm learning really a lot about policy. Our language has to evolve with the times too. So we'll be having another conversation, but I'm not going to open that one up for this meeting because it's not about electronic devices. It's about another policy where we have to update the words that we say, because some of the things are not as applicable. So I only have a 7-year-old daughter, so I haven't learned all the halter
will.
crop, et cetera. But we need to have a conversation about that eventually too.
Thank you.
And if I could just clarify one point, I've heard from a few folks that the administration wanted to do something and the board said no. It's not true. We've been going through a process. We always engage the board along the way to make sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of what we're thinking, what we're processing. We had a lot of questions we couldn't answer among ourselves. For example, why underbags? Why not Faraday bags? Why not the lockers? So there's a lot of different things that we're looking at, and we're going to continue to research that while we engage. We're of the opinion that some schools can enforce this policy without spending $100,000 on yonder bags or Faraday bags. Is this something we can do? But to your point, Cheryl, it comes down to day one. Everybody's saying these are the rules, and we have to support those, and that's the plan.
We all agree that.
While having the, and I'd be remiss, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say, and understanding the research behind the harm that comes with increased screen time.
Yep.
Cell phones right now are a symptom of a greater issue that we're dealing as a world. Connectivity, relationships, and just authentic engagement and play. The one thing that we haven't talked about, whether we're talking our biggest kids at the high school all the way down to our pre-K, is play-based experiences. It's hard to have play-based experiences when you're tied to a screen. So once again, going back to when you go into our strategic plan, like there's connections here. When we start talking about universally designing learning opportunities and engage, in order to have a fighting chance of doing that, we need our students to be engaged so that we can offer this menu of engagement and representation of learning opportunities. So this does all interconnect to where we want to be as an ideal model district moving forward. We have the hard work of doing that work now. So I do applaud people that have a variety of opinions and thoughts on this. This is how healthy communities and healthy organizations work. We don't do things in silos. And I know sometimes it's seen as or is it really lip service or is it real? Is it genuine? Do we really want to engage? And I hope that our track record as an administration more times than not shows this. But it is hard though. It's hard to listen because you want action too. And knowing when the right time to pull those triggers, those are the hard ones. But we have to continue to have humility, put ego aside, and listen. And I hope we all can take that approach, even when we're most passionate. And don't mistake passion as anything other than wanting to do right for ourselves, for those that we serve, and for this profession. Right? It's hard. And the moment that we think we've handled hard well, things get even more hard and more challenging. But together, we can handle challenge and difficulty. It just, takes removing a bit of ego and being able to listen, learn, and lead and trust. Trust is built over time, and waxing on poetic, I apologize.
Actually,
We
I
have,
think we're
we're gonna have
Yeah.
to wait, we'll do a
Second.
second hearing of the public. We've already voted to suspend the order, and then we'll do another hearing of the public. Thank you. Can I have a motion to go into executive session under A2 employment?
So moved.
Roll call?
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mrs. Washington? Yes. Mrs. Nazario?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Dr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Any old business? Reports recommendation of the treasurer.
I have items 10.01 through 10.06 for approval.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Reports recommendation of the superintendent.
I'd like the board to consider for approval, item 11.01, personnel matters.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
I abstain. I have a relative on that.
I'd like the board to consider for approval, items 11.02 to 11.12, personnel matters.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider for approval, items 12.01 to 12.35.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion on this one? Roll call?
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider for approval, item 13.01, other matters.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Do we have any new business?
I'd just like to tell a positive story, something that happened to me yesterday. I had lunch with a recent graduate of Lorain High who was leaving for college today. And we were talking, and I asked him how he was going to get there. And he told me of one of his teachers that was taking him down to West Virginia today. And I also know that this teacher reached out to a lot of colleagues and helped outfit this young man with what he needs for college. And it truly does take a village. And without mentioning one name, for fear that I would be forgetting so many others that do so much, I just want to say thank you. And that these are the kinds of things that happen in Lorain schools every day that we don't hear about. So to that teacher and to all the other teachers that have gone above and beyond, I want to say thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Any committee reports? Second hearing of the public.
That's not public, that's Julie.
I'll fill this out in a minute. Julie Garcia, President of Lorain Education Association. As I listened to Mr. Scott's presentation, and thank you for your responses, I do have some additional questions that I think our staff are going to ask. I'll be happy to send those to you in an email. But the questions are those guidelines going to be different from school to school and class to class? Because you said that they were going to come up with some guidelines. And are you saying that the building admin will come up with those guidelines and consequences? And will the staff have input in those decisions? What is a distraction? Who decides what a distraction is? And are there different levels of distractions when we speak of distractions in the lunchroom or in the hallways? Also, does the policy include elementary schools? Because as I just heard from an elementary teacher, there's a third grader in one of the buildings that had their cell phone out and was calling or texting mom and videotaping. So those policies need to extend to our elementary schools as well. And somebody mentioned putting it in their syllabus. As a teacher, I'm creating my syllabus now. What am I supposed to put in my syllabus? I realize we start school in 2 weeks, and I think those questions need to be answers for our teachers. That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll email those to me?
Email them to us.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Madam President, may I know we don't normally respond, but there's a couple that,
Okay, go ahead.
if you're okay with. One, consistency across classrooms begins with classrooms. Two, in regards to the consistency of policy, our middle school and our high school are different, just like the elementary, right? So, in there will be consistency amongst grade bands, is what I will definitely say. In regards to the elementary piece, because I want to also address that one, we spoke with some school leaders there. Those instances of student cell phone misuse are, I want to say, not the norm. It's more normalized at middle school and definitely more normalized at the high school. However, the stay away approach or away for the day approach is going to be consistent at the elementary level, and we'll engage with elementary students a little bit differently than we might some of the older students. I think that hit a lot, but most of the big ones. But if you could come back to, in regards to syllabus, I get it. Hopefully that's a clause that someone can add in, and before pressing print. Or in this day and age, it's electronic, and I'm assuming it's going to the students electronically. So I do think there still would be time to adjust adding a phrase in folks' syllabi. But we want to make sure, one, that we weren't interrupting folks during their time away and saying, read this now, because we all know that they're not obligated to read that correspondence. So it could be intermittent there. But for the sake of consistency, that first Monday, that is going to be a small part of the high school agenda.
Well, the other concern that, I'll go back up if you want me to.
No, you're
The other concern is that, okay, so if you're telling us whatever it is, that we're gonna send the kids to the office or whatever the decision is made, is the support going to be from our admin, not only our building admin, but you as well? Is that support going to be there to stand behind us and say, this is the policy, this is what we've come up with?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, it will.
Julie, I
It's
think
going to take all of us, but yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the consistency that we need to begin with is that first and foremost, the problem is in the classroom. And we can't afford to not support people and expect consistency. And in the same token, we have to be able to expect consistency in order to support.
Well, I think what's going to happen though is if we really do what we say we're going to do, is there's gonna be a lot of kids in a lot of offices the first week or two of school, and we have to
Yep.
know that what you say is gonna go, because if not, it's not worth the fight and it's not worth the effort.
Understood?
We agree.
Another thing if we don't support.
Yeah.
Anything else? Our next board meeting will be on August 26th here in the board reading room at 5 o'clock. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
Support.
Roll call.
Mrs. Washington. Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mrs. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Dr. Ballard.
Yes.